Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Media User, a podcast about how AI and other emerging tech affects our lives. AI and emerging tech are changing the world, but what does it mean for you? We aim to cut through the noise to show how these technologies are shaping our lives today and tomorrow. We break it all down, making it easy to understand what it all means for you, the media user. This show is hosted by myself, Ramzi Shalal, and my good friend, aka Ahmed Kadam.
Hey, Ramsey.
Awesome. And we're really excited to kind of get into this episode. We have a really interesting topic today. And I think the word on the street or the buzzword is vibe coding. And I think I love it. In this episode, we kind of want to go over what really is vibe coding. And I know AK's had some great experience, deep experience, utilizing different applications for vibe coding. But it would be good to kind of give the audience a bit of a primer on what that is. AK, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So vibe coding as a term was coined by Andrei Karpathy. He's like one of the co-founders of OpenAI, who's since been just doing his own thing. And he describes, his flow recently jumping into something like Cursor, which is an AI coding tool. And instead of actually following along with the code that it's writing and using it as a sort of coding copilot, which has been the dominant mode for the last 2 years, instead just telling it what to do and accepting it, whatever it is. And so instead of trying to build the app where you're reviewing the code and you're looking through what the AI is giving you, rejecting it, editing it, you're just vibing. And you're just, whatever, you want this button to be blue. Hey, make this button blue. Okay, let's move this over here. Let's add this feature, make all of these things animate in. You're just describing what you want every step of the way, and the AI does it.
Yeah, I think I remember I met a developer very early days into my career, and I had no coding knowledge, and I always found it pretty complicated how and interesting about how developers would go about building apps. And I met this one developer, and he just said to me, "Yeah, I just basically tell the code what to do, and it does it." And this was pre-AI days, right? Before Cursor was out, before Bolt was out, before ChatGPT. And I was like, all right, surely that's a bit harder than it seems. But now it's like you literally just tell it, like, hey, I want a website that does XYZ. I want an app that does XYZ, has this color scheme, has this functionality, and it's just breathed into life. And now you can kind of kick back, put on your ambient lighting, stick some R&B on the record player, and and just go full throttle. It's a pretty weird thing to think about.
Yeah, like maybe he was having more of the Matrix experience where he's watching the Matrix, flowing down his screen, and to him that's something clear. Obviously, average person, it just looks like a jumble. And now we get that extra layer of translation that I can just describe in clear English what I want, and then the app shows up and the app changes the way I'm asking. Now, it's not as smooth as that. A lot of the time it is, and when it isn't, it really sucks. So I think that's the big kind of first realization most people find, that I found when I started. It's like the first step, you're just like, wow, holy shit, this thing just, do we swear on this podcast? Am I bleeping that?
Yeah, fuck it,
All
why
right.
not?
We'll get a parental guidance sticker for the cover.
Media users over the age of 16 only,
Yeah.
or whatever the swearing limit is. I don't know, 18.
I mean, you get a holy shit moment the first time. It just makes the app that you just told it to. Like, let's say I want a family planning app that helps me figure out the activities and the meals for everyone this week. And you just have something loose in your mind, you can describe it, and it just whips something up that is way beyond what you might have imagined at first. And so that first step is usually incredible. And then you think, oh, this looks really cool, but actually I want this to work more like this. Or I want someone else to be able to edit this, but I need to kind of control that, like the privacy of who can see this. And the more you start to add and change and tweak things, the more the system of kind of talking to the AI to get what you want starts to show its weaknesses. And this is something that maps back to, like, even just working with an engineer in the olden days. you get to the 80% pretty quick, and then everything after that tends to take a little more time. It's like the final 10% is the longest. And if anything, it's even steeper of a curve when working with AI. You get to 80% in 5 minutes, but then each percent after that probably takes, double, triple as long as the previous couple of iterations.
Is it because that AI's output is just really generic in this sense, and you just need to really put more thought into it? Or is it just like more Frankenstein together in terms of the output? Or what do you think is the reason that the 80% that you get from working with an engineer versus 80% you get from working with an AI generated output? Is it a difference in the output itself, or is it maybe the foundations that it's built on? What would you say is the biggest factor in kind of leading us to this world where now you have to put a lot more effort to get that final 20%?
I think maybe the first thing is because of the way a lot of these tools are set up, and I'll name a few just to kind of jog people's awareness of it. So Replit has been very, very much pushing the frontiers of this. It's an all-in-one, full like development in the browser, and now they have really good AI features, so you can do front end, back end, database, all with them. Then a couple of new tools emerged in the fall. Was Bolt.new was I think the first one that really got traction, and very quickly after that, Lovable.dev. There's others now. So the developers have been using Cursor and more recently Windsurf, and that's more like a hybrid where you can code and you can talk to the AI and you can get different modes of working with the AI that way. But I personally, after trying all four of them, I've stuck to Lovable. I can talk more about why later. But it's a great like beginner prosumer experience where I don't need to look at code. I can mostly just chat or almost 100% chat. And then once in a while, if I just need to really tweak something very specific, I might look at code or I might just kind of flounder my way through it. So back to your question, like why is that kind of initial output still a long ways off or still? And I think it's because we are not necessarily specifying exactly what we want for every behavior. And it's filling in a lot of gaps. And where the gaps that it's filling in and what you're choosing to describe or what you're able to kind of specify are, let's say, a norm that would work very similarly and you don't need to change it. Like, let's say logging in, signing up, logging in. There's millions of examples that I'm sure made it into the AI's training set. And most of them are going to be good enough examples that fit a pretty widely established pattern. Chances are your app doesn't need to do sign up and log in differently than what's the average out there. And so it'll get that perfectly right if that's what you're asking it to do, or better than what you might have thought. But then if there's something more quirky about your app behaving a certain way that's not the average of what apps out there do, then that's where you get into these kind of like back and forths, trying to explain yourself, trying to show what you really mean. And that can take a while as it kind of just splits off in different directions from that initial prompt.
So for vibe coding to really just be a vibe, it has to realistically be a more general purpose application that maybe you're trying to build on top of and add maybe an extra bit of functionality to. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be building something really unique, it's not necessarily a simple and smooth experience as is expected from the word vibe coding. Is that kind of like how you see it? If we have like a distribution of all the apps ever on a curve, maybe the most common ones sit in the middle, and those are the ones that you can get to like that 80% really fast and really effectively. And then there's outliers on maybe these new ideas that you might have that don't exist. Those are going to require a lot more effort to actually help the AI understand exactly what you're looking for. Does that sound about right?
I'd say mostly right. The average of the data that it has is definitely always going to be done well, but it still can be better at, like, I'll give you an example. One of the apps I built this way has a pretty involved like camera UI that has like a real-time overlay on that camera UI. And so it's the kind of thing I personally have never worked with that type of technology. I've never built that type of interface before. But there are enough examples out there that when I was like, okay, make a camera UI. It's going to overlay something on the face. It's going to detect a face, and then it's going to take a photo. I guess there's enough examples of that out there that its awareness of how to do that and style it nicely and make it work is better than mine. And so sometimes it actually helps me push in new areas that I haven't been, before. But then there are still those examples out there, right? So it's not telling it to make up something that's never been seen before. It's just something I've never seen before.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that would be nice to come on to what type of apps you've been building, because I know you've been building a few things. And it would be good to hear what apps that you have tried to build that have worked like really well, and in terms of kind of getting to that initial, hey, this is good enough to show to someone, and how you would go about again building those apps, what the steps you would take in, uh, what steps were taken to build those apps, and again like how anyone else can jump aboard, get the vibes going, and get coding.
Yeah, the first app I tried to build was just a personal like hobby idea of mine. I call it track triage, and it's a way to help DJs organize all of the music that they want to listen to and sort through and figure out which of these tracks deserve to make it into their library and which do they actually want to buy so they can use them in their DJ sets. And so it's a problem that I've personally solved in a very messy way. And I talked to a lot of DJ friends, and they all each have their very idiosyncratic, very time consuming process to do that. And so I thought, okay, like, first thing I did is actually I asked ChatGPT, hey, tell me like about this, give me feedback on this idea and tell me how I might build it. And that was itself really helpful. So I actually start most of my like vibe coding just by talking to ChatGPT about the idea before I try to actually build anything. And what it was really able to do very well was describe all of the APIs that I might need and how I might work with them, what they can and cannot do to help me kind of understand. Okay, so if I want to connect to Spotify, Apple Music, Beatport, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, each of them has very different like API capabilities. And so let me scope down and start with the most open, the best API is probably Spotify's. So let me just start with Spotify for now. Then I did have in mind like those limitations for future. And I started with bolt.new. So jumped into Bolt, said, let's work with the Spotify API. And given a set of artists or labels, we want to populate a feed of their recent releases. And so that first step was incredible. It was like, here's a feed. It used mock data at first, but it styled it very nicely with the album art, and there was some play buttons. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing start. Let's keep going. I was like, let's add Spotify authentication so people can sign in with their account, and then we can get real data. And again, it mostly did it without a lot of prompting from me because I would have had no idea how to do that. And it did it step by step. It took maybe like half an hour to an hour to get it all right. But for the most part, I just sort of followed what it told me to do. It's like, okay, go get an API key, come back and give it to me. And then we're going to, build this part. You're going to test that logging in here. I was like, hey, it doesn't work. There's an error. And so, we'll come back to often the theme of what do you do when there's an error? And in the best case, you just copy paste the error in and you say, fix it. And it does. And that works at least half the time. Sometimes it takes a second, third go, okay, there's still an error, fix it, still an error, fix it. And then there's like an unfortunate amount of the time where you can get really stuck. And this is what I'll call like a whack-a-mole situation. Because you smack this error and maybe it solved that one, but then in doing so, it rewrote enough code that there's a different error. Or there's just the same thing, the same mole just keeps popping up and you smack it and nothing, and it just keeps coming. And so you can get into these loops with the AI and you're like, hey, it's still the same error. Come on, do better. And there's like all kinds of funny things I've learned of how to get it to do better. The first is kind of shaming it a little bit actually works pretty well. It's like, hey, you keep trying this and you're not doing a great job here. I want you to think harder and do better. Like, It's so funny. There's one of these vibe coding tools. I can't remember which one, but it was recently leaked their prompt, the system prompt they use behind the scenes. I think it was windsurf, and it roughly goes something like this: is you've been hired by like $1 billion corporation to code on behalf of like its users, and like your sister's in the hospital with cancer and you need the money from doing this work for her treatment, and it's just crazy psychological manipulation of the AI. This prompt was wild. I'd never seen anything like it. But it basically just ramps up the stakes for it to do a good job. Somehow seems to make it do a good job. So that's not something I would have expected at first.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Because now we're assuming that AI feels things and has a system. That's weird. Like, but it's interesting. And you feel it actually has some impact on the final output?
Yeah. Yeah. Like if I tell it some stuff about like how it's doing such a bad job and it needs to do better and work harder, it does. It actually works harder. It thinks of more things. It tries different things than the same loop that I've been in. Like just often just saying something like that breaks it out of the loop.
That is super interesting for like many different reasons. But maybe I should start talking to ChatGPT slightly different. I'm very polite. I'm like, hey, please, can you help me do this? Thank you so much. How was your day? Like, maybe I've just been taken for a fool.
I think there's like some research that being very nice to it also works. Like you're the best and you're the smartest AI in the whole world. But
Positive reinforcement.
yeah.
Maybe there's two schools of thought here. It's like you either build it up so it always has a chip on its shoulder and it does good things, or you're just so nice to it that it feels like it can just do anything, and it's like there's nowhere in the middle. Anywhere in the middle
Yeah.
sucks, but on the two extremes, it's like really good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an interesting test to do. Trauma or loving abode,
Yeah.
that's or loving like loving home. That's so funny. Um, okay, but that's a good way to go about it, right? Like, so you basically get AI to help you map out everything else. So then once you do put it into your vibe coding tool, it's in a format that the AI should be able to understand a lot more easily, right? And I think that's also a big thing in terms of formatting the prompt and making sure that it's easy to pick up. But do you see, because obviously your background as starting off as an engineer, a developer, moving into design, and now product, do you feel like you have a good skill set for this? You're someone who has experience building products again from them to designing them to etc.
Yeah.
What about for the average person? Are these tools applicable for those who, for example, just want to maybe build like a fun website with like a meme on it, or something that they can just like fuck around with and try out? And is there going to be a world where we do see a proliferation of very simple apps run by anybody, from the pharmacist to the flower shop lady to the person who works at the cinema? And the reason I ask this is because I know in the gaming scene last year, with the advent of AI, I think there was more games published on Steam with the use of AI than basically games that were not using AI to be created. Do you see that there is a world where people will get involved in the development of applications solely using these vibe coding apps and apps that allow you to create applications without really having to be able to code?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're right that I am very well suited for this because, yeah, started out a couple of years as a software developer, have since been a product manager and designer. So, in the sense, I already prompt my engineering team. Here's what I'm looking for. I'm good at specifying it. I can design if needed, and so all of those same skills really help me work with the AI. One of the big things I learned is I never start a project now without a fully written out like product requirements doc and a fully, or not maybe fully, but at least a couple of design screens So I can give it all of the context up front, and it can start the project kind of knowing where it's going. I learned the hard way. Like if I just start with a couple of sentences prompts, it ends up doing too many things that I have to overwrite later. And for the average person who is interested in making something of their own, let's say it's a cool website with a meme. Let's say it's a little, you know, workout tracker for themselves, some fun little utility. I think it's still perfectly possible for them to make that and have fun making that with the tools available right now. But they'll probably be forced to learn like basic product skills, like how to specify what do I really mean when I say I want to increment the number and then hit save. Like, saying I want to enter my weight that I'm lifting is vague. But saying I want there to be a plus and a minus and it goes up by 5 increments and it stops at 0 and it maxes out at 500, and then it should automatically save. I don't want to have a save button. Like getting to that level of specificity is not going to be intuitive for the average person at first, but I don't think it would take them long to just get used to being that specific. And you don't need to be like a designer in Figma. You could easily sketch something on a piece of paper and use that to describe to the AI what you're trying to achieve. So I think for the average person, if they have the interest, they have the passion for the idea, they're going to be unlocked from trying it and making it happen. And they'll learn the tips and tricks that happen along the way. I think the biggest blocker for them, though, is the bug loop. Because then it's not like something you can learn. It's like, it's the same bug. The AI doesn't seem to be able to figure it out. An engineer would have just jumped into the code and read it until they knew what was going wrong. But you don't have that ability. Do you just accept that your project gets stuck? What do you do in that case? There are tricks that work, but I think at the same time, like for example, Lovable has a page of like contractors that they've partnered with that will just do it like something as simple as I'll come and look at your project for an hour and just help debug things and help like solve like little issues. So it's kind of acknowledging like there is still room for that occasional bit of professional help.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that too, because I think we have to be realistic in what the ceiling for the types of apps that can be and should be created by the everyday person. Now, I was at my friend's office last Friday, and they're building a cybersecurity startup, and I asked them about it, and I was like, "Guys, Cursor, like, what's the deal here?" And I was speaking with the CTO and one of the engineers, and they were like, "Yeah, like we'll never touch it." And I was like, "Oh, you know what?" And me being so like me, was like, "You know what? It's so good. Like I've got all this stuff, and I've even used it, and it's like really hard." Like, well, yeah, but what you're building and what we're building are very different things. It's very good for high level things, simple things as we've described, more simple than obviously what a cybersecurity startup or a distributed ledger company would be building. For example, like you wouldn't use AI to build a blockchain. That would be pretty ridiculous. But what their main point was is the tool is not set up at this point to be building large scale applications, to be building complex applications with really complex functions. It's very much on a simple basis. And I think stemming from that, they moved on to the side of security itself. These apps do not have any inherent security that you would have to kind of build in. And I'm not the best person to speak about the ins and outs of security when it comes to developing applications or deploying applications. But their main point was even if the whole world knew how to build applications, most of them would lack the necessary security that would keep their users safe. And that is obviously a really, really important thing to keep in mind. Because at the end of the day, if you're building an app and it's really good and it works and it's built with AI and fantastic, you built something, but it needs to be something that is deployable. Building something just to have like a nice UI to play around with and try things out is one thing. Having something that can safely process funds, for example, without getting hacked is a different story altogether.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, so for your friends like working in cybersecurity, it makes 100% sense. You shouldn't let an AI near that. But for the average product idea, the average kind of little widget that people might want, I think there's not often a lot of security implications with the types of things that I'm building, and so I'm not scared about it. And it's also able to do the basics of that kind of thing. Like you can tell the AI to review the code for security, and it will probably do a better job than the average junior developer. So if you are currently trusting a developer with 1, 2, 3 years of experience, they don't tend to have the security mindset in their head at that stage in their career. The AI will probably do a better job than them. So as long as it's not like mission critical, financial, I wouldn't be worried too much about it. But I think it's also not talking about what's the real value for the average person, especially in a business context. It's not because it's going to be scales to 1 million people and secure for financial benefits. Even if you were testing an idea that needed to do those things, it's that you would have probably never made your concept of that idea because you didn't have the justification that it was worth it. And so it would have been stuck in a roadmap document that says, one day we'll try this. And it would have been held up, basically. One of the coolest things that I've now been able to do, I was on a call with a potential client a few weeks ago. And in the call, they were describing the type of app they wanted for their specific use case. It's in pharmaceuticals, so potentially for a clinical trial. They wanted something to distribute to the patients. And in the middle of the meeting, I just went off camera. I turned on, like I went to Lovable and I started coding it. And I started just making the basic ideas. As he was describing features, I would prompt for those features. And by the end of the meeting, it was like, okay, so like when can we like see something? When can we try it? If we were to go ahead, like we wouldn't want to give the sign off yet, but let's, talk about what the timeline might be if we were to give a sign off. And I said, actually, I've just made a prototype for you. Can you, if you want to try it out and give me some feedback? And it was like, wait, what? Like this kind of just flipped the expectations completely. Instead of let's go find a business justification and let's go do a bunch of user research and let's go have a committee and design it. And instead, it's like, here's the thing to try. Now let's justify it based on actually trying it, using it, sending it out to some number of people. Is this what we mean? Is this what we want? And I think that's the real superpower here for more of a business context, is that ability to just talk about stuff less and do stuff more.
It's like that startup quote: fire first, aim second.
Yeah.
Right? Get something out there, let people give feedback, then we can think about what to do next. Because I think, especially for young entrepreneurs, right, you get stuck in this loop of, oh, what do we need to be like assessing? Who is our audience? What should the product be? It doesn't need to be the best thing first off. Get it out, get it done in 30 minutes. Cool, go. What's the feedback? All right, this is shit. Great. Now we know one thing. It's shit. Let's go again. Why is it shit? Okay, this X, Y, Z different thing. You can iterate really fast and then you can go again. And I think that's going to be really interesting. Will it mean that realistically we'll see a lot of shitty apps on the internet? Probably. Will they get better really fast? Probably as well.
Yeah.
I think I remember, actually, you mentioned you use Lovable to do it. I remember using Lovable like 6 months ago or 5 months ago, but I think at the end of 2024 at some point. And I was like, this is kind of not good. I think it was November. And I was like, really, this is not good. And I went and then started using Bolt, which I really liked Bolt. I think I saw like a TikTok or some nice piece of content around Lovable. I tried it out and I was like, just not impressed. But now obviously they've hit, I think the last stat was they're increasing their ARR by 2 million every single week or something. Is it something like that? Like
That's
absolutely
crazy.
obscene.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nuts. But obviously I imagine that they're using part of their product in their own flywheel effect, right? Helping them iterate faster using their own product, I imagine, is probably a good thing to do. And it's clear that if we assume they are doing it, it's clearly working, because now it's all the rave. It's probably by mindshare the furthest ahead in the vibe coding scene. Again, you have other apps like Windsurf, Replit, Bolt. There's an app called Vibe Code, which is very well named. But yeah, I think it's important, especially for those of you who may be in jobs or have ideas. You don't have to be confined to just having the ideas anymore. You do have an outlet to go and try and put it at least not even to paper, but to a screen. And that's way further than you would have gotten before for a fraction of the cost and time. And what you do with it from there is totally up to you. But now the barrier to entry is so low for building applications or building things that we'll probably see many small, nimble teams building like huge products that have started with just this prototype from a vibe coding app, which I think is really really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying stuff myself now. I'm able to say yes to a lot of things at work that I would have had to be the one to say no before. And yeah, just whenever I have an idea now, I feel that possibility opening up instead of, kind of worrying about how I'm going to achieve it. When am I going to hire an engineer? Like, so much more of a feeling of freedom and exploration there.
Yeah, I think I felt the same. And sometimes you're like, I mean, from my point of view, my only coding experience is doing like a Python bootcamp and
Nice.
an SQL bootcamp, both of which I think I somehow managed to cheat. It was like on Code Academy or something. I think I just like I don't know. I was awful. I'm not built to be a yeah, never hire me for any technical role. But I think the feeling was like I have now the power of an engineer, and I'm able to put those ideas into practice without having to actually really put too much effort in. I remember the first website I built with Bolt. I even had like a night mode. Switching from light to dark mode, and for example, we were building a website for another project we were working on, and it was like we have one audience who cares about the product for this reason, and another audience who cares about the product for this reason. And we had a little toggle, and it was like switch if you're a developer, or switch if you're or enterprise, or whatever it might have been, and really seamless. And it did it really nicely, and that's when I was like, okay, cool, maybe I could do something here. And it did feel a little bit liberating because I think before I would have been like, oh, I want to do this thing, but I don't know how to do it. And now it's like, well, I want to do this thing, and I can try and do it, and I can try to figure it out in a much easier way, with faster feedback loops and like an opportunity to learn how these things actually work in practice as well, which I think is really really cool. Um, and I really can't wait to see what people do try and spin up because I think it will be very very interesting.
Agreed. Yeah, it's going to be an amazing time.
And I think that's all the time we have for this episode today. We hope you enjoyed it. So feel free to give it a like or follow us on social media. And feel free to share it with anyone who would find a show like this helpful, valuable, or entertaining.
If you've got any questions about vibe coding, shoot us an email at human@medianuser.com. We'd be happy to answer any of those questions for you.
Awesome. And we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.